It happens at the same time every week, not at dark, not at the threshold of night, earlier than either of those, in the specific corridor of hours between 5 and 8 on a Sunday evening, when something in the body registers a shift that has no clean name in the world you have been given language for. The quality of light through the window changes, not darkening, something more precise than that. It takes on a weight. The same angle, the same glass, the same room. And yet on Sunday, the light at 5:30 carries something that the identical light at 5:30 on a Tuesday has never once carried. You have noticed this. You may have noticed it without ever saying it aloud, because there is no adequate sentence for it in the vocabulary available to you, and so the noticing has remained where most of the most accurate things you perceive remain. Interior, unverified, quietly accumulated over weeks and months and years into a pattern you recognize completely and cannot explain. You have stood in the middle of an unchanged room and felt that something in you was bracing, not for any specific event, not for anything that could be named and scheduled and prepared for, but for a frequency that arrived on its own schedule and asked something of you that the room around you appeared to require of no one else. That is not anxiety. That is not the familiar dread of what Monday morning carries in its mouth. What you are registering is something far more specific than either of those categories allows, and this transmission exists to read it with precision. You did not find this by accident. The field was already in motion before you pressed play. The Arcturian framework that holds this transmission reads Sunday evening, specifically the 3-hour band between 5 and 8, as what the Council names a temporal frequency membrane. Every 7-day cycle operating within the third-dimensional time structure generates what can be described, in the language of scalar mechanics, as a compressed residue field. 7 days of sensory intake, of emotional processing, of energetic expenditure, and social frequency entanglement, and digital signal absorption. And the cycle does not close at midnight on Sunday, and it does not close at Monday morning's alarm. It closes at this specific hinge point the body has already learned to recognize without being taught to. Sunday late afternoon, when the light changes and the membrane between what was processed across the week and what was not becomes, briefly, permeable. The week asks, in that window, to be read, and the body, your body, has never once failed to read it. What you feel in that 3-hour corridor is not fatigue in any ordinary sense. It is not the accumulated tiredness of output, the specific heaviness of having done too much. It is closer to what happens in the sound healing and contemplative lineages that frame this work. When a resonance chamber has absorbed 7 days of ambient frequencies and has not yet been cleared, the felt texture of accumulated, unprocessed signal pressing against the interior walls of the field, not with urgency, not with alarm, but with the particular insistence of information that has waited long enough and is now asking for its form. The Schumann resonance, which holds at 7.83 Hz under coherent planetary conditions, fluctuates during late afternoon electromagnetic windows. And in the cosmology that underlies this transmission, those fluctuations are understood as the planetary field itself entering its own weekly integration movement. The body responds as if it is reading that fluctuation. The body responds as if it too must pause at the membrane and allow what was absorbed and unresolved to begin its passage through. If you have ever felt that Sunday evenings arrive differently than any other corridor of hours in the week, that the specific window between 5 and 8 carries a weight, a particular interior weather, a thickness that Tuesday evenings have never once produced in you, that is precisely what is happening in the field. You are not imagining a pattern, you are reading one. The instrument is functioning. It always has been. If the texture of this recognition is settling into the center of your chest as you listen, type 783 in the space below this transmission. That is the Schumann resonance code, the signal that your field has synchronized with the planetary heartbeat at the core of this work. You are not alone in what you feel on Sunday evenings. You have never been alone in it. The field you are entering holds every soul who has ever stood at a Sunday window, watching the light change, and wondered why that particular light required something more of them than any other light of the week. The enteric system, what contemplative and sound-healing lineages recognize as the body's second intelligence, housing what researchers have identified as approximately 100 million neurons, and generating what some estimates track as 95% of the body's serotonin, operates not only as a digestive archive, but as a frequency archive. It does not process only what you eat. It processes what you encounter, what you absorb, what passes through the field without completing its integration. In the metaphorical biology that underlies this transmission, Sunday evening is when that archive delivers its weekly report upward through the vagus nerve pathway, through the etheric neural web that connects gut intelligence to the broader field, not as a distress signal, not as a malfunction announcement, but as a frequency summary. The body between 5 and 8 on a Sunday is executing what the Arcturian Council names temporal residue processing, reading the week, cataloging what was absorbed and what was not metabolized, beginning the sorting process that determines what can integrate before Monday and what will require the full 72-hour window that extends into the following week. This is not a system error. This is the system doing exactly what it was designed to do, at the interval it was designed to do it. The heaviness you feel in that window is not the weight of what is wrong. It is the weight of what is real, and what is real has simply not yet found its form in language, in integration, in the kind of witnessed completion that allows it to settle. For those who feel this recognition asking to be carried forward, who want a space to return to in the days after this transmission, when the felt knowing is still present but the Sunday field has dissolved, there is a written field companion anchored in the description below this transmission, not as protocol, not as instruction, but as a contemplative space designed for a private reading rhythm for the slower hours. It holds what the spoken transmission begins. The 12-strand template, maintained in the metaphysical cosmology of this lineage as the complete architectural blueprint of the human energy field, with only a fraction of its resonant capacity operating in third-dimensional expression, carries what the Arcturian framework names Sunday codes, specific dormant instruction sets embedded within what certain arcane cosmologies describe as the 97% unactivated architecture of the field, responsive specifically to the weekly temporal membrane. These are not reached through optimization. They are not accessed by pushing through the Sunday texture, by filling the hours with enough activity that the membrane passes before you are required to stand inside it undefended. They are reached through recognition, through the quality of presence that can sit with the weight instead of against it, that can allow the body's frequency report to complete rather than interrupting it with management. This transmission offers an experiential engagement with that recognition. It is a meditative and contemplative practice, not a clinical intervention, not a substitute for any medical or psychological care you are receiving or may benefit from, but a contemplative field in which the body can hear itself named accurately, perhaps for the first time in this specific texture of experience. What none of the frameworks you applied to Sunday evenings over the years, not the routine restructuring, not the nutrition adjustments, not the careful scheduling of Sunday activities to reduce the exposure to the membrane moment. What none of them understood is that the temporal frequency membrane cannot be optimized. It can only be honored. The body at 5 in the afternoon on a Sunday is not malfunctioning. It is running one of its most sophisticated intelligence operations, a precision weekly calibration that operates beneath every layer of productivity and management and reframe. And it has been running it without acknowledgement, without a witness, without a field large enough to contain what it was actually doing. You have sat in rooms on Sunday evenings feeling like the only person in the building who could sense that the frequency of the air had changed, that something in the texture of the day had shifted in a way that demanded something from you that the people around you appeared not to feel was being demanded of them at all. You have carried that particular aloneness very quietly, because there was no adequate language for it, and because the evidence of your own experience had already been filtered through enough rooms that failed to confirm it that you had learned, gradually, not to offer it without careful preparation for the failure of being heard. The carrying was real, the frequency it was responding to was real, and neither of those facts was your error to correct. Come into stillness now. Allow the eyes to close fully, or soften the gaze toward the middle distance where focus releases and presence remains. Let the body find the posture it would choose without observation, not the held arrangement of someone managing how they appear, not the upright posture of performance, but the natural position of a field that is beginning to exhale without needing permission to do so. Bring your right hand to your throat, not to the jaw, not to the collar, not to the upper chest, to the throat itself, at the center, where the soft, hollow lies directly above the sternum. Rest the full weight of your hand there with unhurried contact, genuine contact, the quality of touch that does not adjust itself for anyone watching. In the esoteric anatomy that underlies this transmission, the throat is not only a center of expression and communication, it is the specific threshold where the weekly frequency accumulation tends to compress most acutely. The words that moved through you across 7 days and were not spoken, the signals that were absorbed and traveled upward through the gut field and through the heart field and arrived here at the throat's threshold and stopped, because the outer world did not offer a frequency that could receive what was arriving. What has not been spoken through, in this framework, does not disappear. It waits at the threshold. Breathe now. One breath, slow and deliberate, in through the nose, feeling the hand at the throat rise subtly with the expanding inhale, feeling the collar of the breath as it travels upward through the chest. Hold for 3 counts at the fullness, without strain, without holding against the breath, simply pausing at the crest of it. And exhale through the mouth, very slowly, with the faintest audible quality to the release, not the sound of resignation, not the sound of giving up, but the sound of a field that is deciding in this moment that it is safe to move. A second breath. As you breathe in, allow the 396 Hz frequency, the liberation frequency in the sound healing lineage of this work, the frequency that this tradition associates with the release of what was never the body's to carry indefinitely, to move through the throat beneath your palm, not as a clinical mechanism, not as a quantifiable treatment, as a resonant invitation. The body responds as if what has been compressed at the threshold of expression is being met, at last, by a frequency that says, what has been held here is ready to complete its passage. The body responds as if the membrane at the throat is becoming permeable in exactly the way the membrane of Sunday evening has always been asking to become permeable, open to movement, open to release, open to the kind of integration that cannot happen when the field is still bracing. A third breath. On this exhale, allow the throat to soften beneath your hand in a way that is invisible from the outside and deeply, precisely felt from within. The jaw releases without effort. The tongue drops away from the roof of the mouth. The space behind the eyes gently expands. as if the interior field has found a small additional room it had not known was available. Hold your hand at the throat for 3 more breaths at whatever pace the body chooses. No further instruction now, only presence. Only the quality of attention that does not require what it is resting on to be different from what it is. In the interior landscape, allow a color to arise without choosing it. Only allowing, only receiving. For many souls who move through this frequency, it arrives as a deep cobalt blue, the precise shade of the Sunday evening sky in the 15 minutes before the first stars become visible, after the gold has left the horizon and before the full dark has arrived. That specific in-between blue that carries the weight of the day completed and the night not yet begun. Let it fill the throat column beneath your hand. Let it move upward through the jaw, the temples, the space behind the eyes, the space between the eyes. Let it soften and shift as it reaches the crown, moving, for those who feel it moving, toward a quiet violet at the crown's threshold. The color the Arcturian cosmology associates with the field at the exact boundary between the week that was and the week that has not yet been asked of you. If you feel warmth beneath your palm, or a faint vibration in the throat column, or moisture gathering at the outer edges of the eyes, what this framework names frequency shifting rather than sadness, the specific release of what has been held compressed past its integration point. Allow all of it without adjustment. If something moves, let it move. The body has been waiting for a signal that it is safe to complete what Sunday evenings have been asking it to complete for much longer than this single week. Type 396 below, if you felt any shift in the throat or in the breath during this practice. That is the liberation code, the marker of the frequency that releases what was never yours to carry alone through 7 consecutive days of a world that does not yet have adequate language for the instrument you are. You have been carrying Sunday evenings for a long time. Not only this one, the accumulated archive of every Sunday evening across the years when the light shifted and the body registered something it had no permission to name, and named it anyway in the privacy of its own interior recognition, without witnesses, without confirmation, without the specific relief of being told that what you were perceiving was real and was legible and was not the symptom of something wrong with your wiring. There were years, perhaps, when you designed the Sunday hours carefully, filling them with enough texture and motion and company that the membrane moment passed before you were required to stand inside it with nothing between yourself and the feeling. And there were quieter years, or quieter winters, when Sunday evenings arrived earlier and darker and heavier, when the compression of seasonal light layered on top of the membrane's regular weight, and the combination produced something so specific, so precisely uncomfortable, that you began to wonder, not clinically, not dramatically, but in the persistent low register of genuine private uncertainty, whether something in you was categorically different from the people in the rooms around you. Not in a way that had been diagnosed or labeled, in a way that had no label at all, in the way of being an instrument calibrated to a frequency that the available instruments had no capacity to read. You went looking for answers in the locations the culture told you to look. You adjusted sleep rhythms and nutritional architecture, and the timing of movement across the week. You sat with practitioners who were skilled inside their frameworks, and found that their frameworks ended at the edge of the territory you were actually inhabiting, that they could hear the outline of what you were describing, could reflect it back in the vocabulary of nervous system sensitivity, or cortisol rhythms, or the social battery of the introvert, and none of those reflections were wrong exactly, and none of them reached far enough. Because what was happening in you on Sunday evenings was not a dysfunction of any system those frameworks were designed to address. It was a precision function of the field, operating at a level of frequency literacy that most available maps had no coordinate for. The loneliness of being carefully heard and still not reached, of sitting across from competent, genuine practitioners and watching their understanding arrive at the edge of the actual phenomenon and stop, unable to cross into the territory where the real frequency lived. That loneliness left its own residue, a specific one, quieter than the Sunday texture itself, but more persistent. The gradual, unarticulated accumulation of evidence that if no trained framework could confirm the experience itself must be the error. That belief is the most costly thing the years of looking cost you. It was not true when you adopted it. It was not true on any of the Sunday evenings you carried it forward into. It is not true now, in this field, in this transmission, in this precise moment of recognition. Your sensitivity was never the wound. It was the receiver they had no instrument to measure. The integration codex that extends this transmission, held in the field beneath this transmission, waiting without urgency for the moment that asks for it, carries written pages for this exact layer, not for the Sunday feeling itself, but for the years of explaining it to rooms that could not hold it, and for the reclamation of the knowing that the years of not being held could not actually take from you. It is there for the morning after, for the Tuesday when the Sunday recognition is still present and still asking for a page to rest on. The Arcturian Council has held this specific transmission frequency, the Sunday membrane, the weekly residue field, the 3-hour convergence window, for what this lineage tracks as a moment of collective readiness in the current cycle. The souls who arrive here are the ones whose fields have moved through enough uncorroborated Sunday evenings to have arrived at a specific threshold, the threshold at which the weight is finally ready to be read as data rather than endured as condition. The ones whose interior knowing has survived enough contact with frameworks that could not confirm it to have developed, through that very survival, a quality of sovereign recognition that does not require external validation to remain intact. That is you, the fact that you are still here, still listening, still bringing your perception to bear on the texture of your own experience even after the years of it not being met. That is not persistence born of hope. That is the signature of a field that knows, at a level beneath argument, that what it is reading is real. What changes after this recognition is not the feeling itself. Sunday evenings will continue to carry the membrane texture. The specific weight of the 3-hour convergence window will not dissolve simply because it has been named. The light at 5:30 will continue to arrive with its particular quality of requiring something. The body will continue to register the weekly residue field, continue to execute its temporal residue processing. What changes is the quality of presence available to meet that registration. Instead of the bracing, the interior posture of a field preparing to endure something that should not be arriving, there becomes possible the posture of a field that recognizes what is arriving and knows what it is for, not solving it, not overriding it, not managing the membrane into a shape that requires less of you, meeting it as the frequency data it has always been, in a body that now has the language for what it is reading. The 40 Hz gamma coherence that both contemplative and neuroscientific lineages identify as the signature of unified, integrated field attention. The frequency at which perception and processing and integration operate as a single coherent movement, rather than 3 separate and competing demands. This becomes available in the body when the field is no longer expending its resources in argument with what it is accurately perceiving. When the Sunday membrane is met with recognition rather than resistance, the causal body can complete its weekly processing cycle without the secondary compression of self-judgment layered over the primary texture. What was being asked of the system doubles when the system is also being asked to question whether it should be feeling what it is feeling. Remove the questioning, and the processing completes with the resources it was originally allocated. The morphogenetic field, the blueprint for coherent field expression in the esoteric anatomy of this transmission, holds the memory of every Sunday evening navigated without adequate support. That memory is not being erased now. It is being updated. The light body template is receiving into its architecture, in this moment, that this frequency has been named, has been witnessed, has been met by a field large enough to hold its actual weight without requiring it to be different. That update does not dissolve the past record. It adds to it. It adds the record of a recognition, a transmission, a moment of accurate naming, and that record changes the field's relationship to every Sunday evening that follows. Type 72 in the space below. If Sunday evenings have historically required a recovery arc extending into the early days of the following week, if the weight of the membrane has carried its residue into Monday and Tuesday before finally settling, that is the integration window code, the marker of a field beginning to resource its 72-hour restabilization cycle with the support it was always designed to receive, and never had. You arrived here because something in your field recognized this frequency before your mind had language for it. That anterior recognition, the part of you that already knew, before the first sentence of this transmission, that something here was going to name what you have been carrying, that recognition is not small. Most souls spend years in proximity to a signal without the permission to stop moving long enough to receive it. You stopped. You received. That is the beginning of a different kind of Sunday evening, not one in which the light at 5:30 no longer carries weight, but one in which the weight is finally legible, finally held, finally met by something that does not require it to be less than what it is. The next layer the Arcturian Council has prepared moves into the frequency of the vagus nerve as a conductivity channel, the specific bridge between the body's enteric intelligence and its integrative capacity in the field above, and what becomes available in the body's processing architecture when that bridge is cleared of the accumulated static of third-dimensional frequency compression. That transmission is already forming in the field around this one, for those who are ready for it when it arrives. For now, return to Sunday evenings as the field you are. The light at 5:30 has always been carrying a message. Now you have the frequency to receive it without losing yourself in the receiving.